Us cyclists absolutely love our bikes, and the last thing we want is for some nasty little tow rag to come along and steal it. But have you ever wondered how secure your bike actually is? It may surprise you to learn that it might not be quite as secure as you first think, and even if you're fully insured, you could still end up without a bike and out of pocket. Since COVID and lockdown, the world and his granny want to get on a bike, and this increased demand has meant that buying one, either brand new or second hand, has become very difficult indeed. In fact, bikes are right up there on the list of things that you can buy on the black market, along with more exotic substances such as toilet paper, for instance. According to the Economic Policy Centre, there were 64,500 bike thefts recorded in the UK in 2021. And obviously that is a massive number, but just imagine the devastating effect that has had on those individual cyclists. Bike theft is now considered one of the most significant barriers to cycling development here in the UK, and that's basically because cyclists that have suffered some kind of bike theft rarely return to cycling. If you want to protect yourself against bike theft, there are two things that you can do. The first thing is to get yourself a good lock, and the second thing is to insure your bike with a reputable bike insurance company. One of the biggest mistakes that many cyclists make is assuming that their bikes are covered under their regular home contents insurance policy. Now, this can lead to a very false sense of security because those policies can be very hit and miss. Firstly, you need to list every bike individually as a high value item. If you don't do that, then they're not covered. Secondly, that policy will only usually cover bikes up to a certain value, and if your bike is beyond that, you will end up out of pocket. And lastly, those policies also have very strict terms and conditions, which if you don't adhere to, or if the circumstances of the theft are beyond those terms and conditions, then again you will be out of pocket. So it's going to be much better to have some specific bike insurance. As you can imagine, there are hundreds of companies these days supplying bike insurance, so I'm not going to go through them all. I personally insure my bikes through a company called Sundays, who cover me for things like accidental damage, theft from and away from home, domestic travel, replacement bike hire, reimbursement new for old, and while transporting my bike on a bike rack. And in case you're wondering, yes, they are sponsoring this video. Even when you are fully covered by bike-specific insurance, should the worst happen, there may be instances when your claim could potentially still be rejected. And that's basically because A, you haven't locked your bike properly, and or B, you've been careless. I'm sure we've all seen these photographs on social media where some silly person has locked their bike to something like a concrete bollard, and then all the thief has had to do is come along, lift it off the concrete bollard, and they've stolen it. So the correct way to lock a bike is to feed the lock through the wheels and the frame and then lock it to an immovable object. And this applies to whether you're out and about cycling, or if you're storing your bike at home, or if you're moving your bike by car on a bike rack. But what I didn't know was that bike locks themselves are rated with a system called Sold Secure. And in theory, you could lock your bike correctly, but with the wrong rating of lock, and your insurance claim could still be rejected. Essentially, it works like this. If your bike is worth £1,000 or less, you need to lock it with a Sold Secure silver lock, and if it's worth more than £1,000, you need to lock it with a Sold Secure gold lock. Another factor that could potentially result in your insurance claim being rejected is if you've left your bike unattended. And that means if it's not in your direct line of sight and or more than 5 meters away from you. And it really does have to be your direct line of sight. It's not enough to ask a friend to keep an eye on it while you pop into the cafe to buy yourself a coffee. Another really big mistake is not insuring your bike, the components, your cycling gadgets and your cycling computers for the correct value. I can't speak for any other bike insurance company, but I know that Sundays run a new for old policy. So basically, if you bought your bike brand new, they'll replace the old one for a new one of comparable value. If you bought your bike second hand, things are slightly different. You have to insure it for the market value of the bike and not what you paid for it. But if you're in any confusion about this, give Sundays a quick ring and I'm sure they'll give you some advice. Regardless of who you insure your bike with, when you receive the policy documents, you should read them very, very carefully and get a clear understanding of what's covered and what's not. And similarly, should the worst happen, you need to make a record of everything you possibly can. The details of where and when the bike was stolen, any phone calls that you made to the police, any crime numbers that they give you, any details of witnesses available, photographs, the broken lock, in fact, anything you can lay your hands on. Hopefully you won't be a victim of bike theft, but if you are, you need to be 100% confident that you did everything you possibly could to prevent it, and you have a reputable company like Sundays insuring your bike. If you'd like to get a quote, I'll leave a link to their website in the description below, and there'll even be a discount code. Sundays also have a little Strava perk, which is a completely free insurance policy for all Strava premium members, and I show you how to activate it in the video just here. In the meantime though, thank you for watching and I'll see you on the next one.